Welcome to the Grewal show. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਗੁਰਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਬੁਲਾ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਖਾਸ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ you will be pleased to know it's Sara Singh, Deputy Leader, Ontario NDP Party. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਉਹ COVID-19 ਤੇ ਹੋਊਗੀ। But first I would like to welcome Ms. Singh to the show. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much, Gurinder ji. Thank you so much for having me. Sat Sri Akal ji ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ।
ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਭੁੱਲ ਗਿਆ, ਸਹਿਰਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਡਿਪਟੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਨੇ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੇ, ਇਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸਹਿਰਾ, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੁਲਾਈ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਇੱਕਦਮ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਇਆ।
ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਬੰਦੇ ਭੁੱਲ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ।
ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੋਨੇ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ।
ਜ਼ਰੂਰ।
ਸੋ as we all know, COVID-19 has affected the whole world around us. There's been huge impact, and for that same reason, today it seems you're self-isolation at your own home office.
It is, yes. Many of us are working from home. ਅਸੀਂ community ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਘਰ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਘਰ ਰਹੋ, and community ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਫਿਰੋ। ਜੇ groceries ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ, ਕੋਈ essential products ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਆ, ਜਦ ਨਿਕਲੋ ਘਰ ਤੇ, ਪਰ otherwise ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੋ ਪਲੀਜ਼।
ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਘਰੋਂ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ I know usually you folks are at Queen's Park 4 days a week no matter what, how does it feel to stay home and do all the work?
It's very strange. It's definitely a change. Lots of calls that we're doing from home. There's still ways to connect with people. You know, technology is amazing, but it's very difficult not being out in the community, going to events, having our regular routine. And I'm sure it's challenging for a lot of people. We were back in the legislature last week on Thursday, March 19th, to pass some emergency legislation. And when we were in the building, we practiced social distancing. We sat apart from other members. So it was a different experience to be back in the legislature, but very important that we practice these health precautions now.
Now, COVID-19 has huge impacts overall, all through the world. But we being in Ontario and you being the deputy leader, you deal with situations which our Premier, Mr. Ford, comes up with, and he deals with those situations. Is the NDP party happy with what Mr. Ford has done so far?
So I think we, through this pandemic, have taken the opportunity to try to work with the Premier's office. I know our leader, Andrea Horwath, has been in consultations with the Premier to ensure that those needs are being met. I think that the government has taken the necessary first steps to warn the public to implement emergency measures. Last week we passed emergency legislation to help workers who required doctor's notes in order to take time off of work, or to ensure that municipal bylaws weren't impacted. So we worked with them to ensure that those sorts of things were put in place. However, there are still a number of gaps in the emergency provisions that are needed, and we are continuing to work with the government to ensure that people are not going to be evicted from their homes, that business owners won't be punished, or that there are programs and opportunities available for them to defer payments that need to be made. So these are the types of measures that the NDP is continuing to work with this government to ensure that no one is unprotected during this very difficult time.
But has COVID-19 brought NDP and the PC party closer, or are there still big, huge differences between both the parties?
Well, I think ideologically, the parties are still very different. What has been interesting for us as New Democrats is to see our Conservative government, I think, reiterate the importance of investments in public health. For example, something that the NDP has been very vocal about when recent cuts were initiated by the government. We now see them during a public health emergency, understanding the importance of public health services and why they need to be adequately funded. I think we also see the government understanding that we need real investments in our healthcare services because, at any moment in the world, something like this can happen. And if our healthcare systems are not properly resourced and adequately staffed, we're unable to deal with a pandemic. And so we've seen the government scramble to try to ensure that those healthcare investments are going to be made. And we're looking forward to the upcoming budget. So for us, I think it's brought us closer together in terms of working together, working collaboratively to ensure that Ontarians are protected. But at the same time, these are many changes that New Democrats have called for years and years to ensure that our public services and systems will be there when we need them in a critical time like what we're experiencing right now.
And what are your thoughts, being the deputy leader of the New Democrats, your thoughts or your party's thoughts on calling the Ontario emergency when it was called, and should it been like an Ontario lockdown, like everything should have been closed down? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that I think we welcome, the state of emergency that was declared by the premier. I think, he's following the recommendations of our chief medical officer of health, and that is very important. I think we supported those decisions, and we will continue to support those decisions. I think what we're seeing is, a need for perhaps additional measures to ensure that people are practicing social distancing, and we'll continue to work with the premier and his office, and as deputy leader, we're working with this government to ensure that those types of measures are taken in a timely and effective manner. But at the end of the day, the premier is following the advice of the chief medical officer, and that is of importance. And a state of emergency in this province is important. I think it's going to help us flatten the curve as we need to, keep people home, and implement the emergency protocols. Also implement additional measures that the government can take, funding packages that can be opened up. So we do support that decision. I think the call from the opposition is we need it quickly.
So the timing should have been before what the timeline was now?
No, I think again, the premier is following the advice of the chief medical officer as he should be, and once the chief medical officer gave those directions to the premier and his team, those directions were communicated to the province. I think. In this pandemic, we don't have time to waste. And so, sure, we can go back on whether that could have been done a day earlier or a day later. But at the end of the day, I think the premier has done the right thing, and we are supportive of the decisions that he's making at this point.
ਸੋ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਵੱਡੀ ਉਮਰ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਨੇ, ਛੋਟੇ ਵੀ ਨੇ, ਹਰੇਕ ਏਜ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਰੈਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਾਂ ਹੈਲਥ ਐਂਡ ਸੇਫਟੀ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਦੀ ਜ਼ੁਬਾਨੀ ਦੱਸੋ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਲੋਕ ਦੇ ਲੁੱਕ ਅਪ ਟੂ ਯੂ, ਦੇ ਫੋਲੋ ਯੂ, ਦੇ ਵਾਂਟ ਬੀ ਲਾਈਕ ਯੂ, ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਦਾ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਦਿਓ।
Well, thank you for those kind words. But both important कि जो भी उम्र होवे साडी कि in necessary health precautions follow हैं, अपने hands ਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਰ ਕੇ ਧੋਣੇ ਆ up to 30 seconds to a minute ਵਾਸਤੇ, soap ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਵਾਰ ਕੇ ਧੋ ਕੇ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ important ਹੈ because ਆਹ disease ਜਰਮਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸਪਰੈਡ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਥ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਰੱਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਪ੍ਰੀਵੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਟੂਲ ਆ। ਆਲਸੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੋ, ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਗਰੋਸਰੀ ਜਾਂ ਮੈਡੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਐਟ ਦੈਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਪਰ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਨੀਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਣੇ ਦੀ, ਫਿਰ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹੋ। ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਡਿਜ਼ੀਜ਼ ਇਹ ਐਕਣ ਸਪਰੈਡ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦਾ ਇਨਫੈਕਟਡ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 3 ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਣੇ, ਉਹ 3 ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ 10 ਅਦਰ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ connect ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ, and that's how we're seeing the transmission. So ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਘਰ ਆਉਂਗੇ ਆਪਣਾ isolation ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਆਪਣੇ home ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਅਸੀਂ prevent ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ disease spread ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ out of country ਤੇ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਆ in the last 14 days, ਅਸੀਂ please urge ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ recently returned Canadians or permanent residences ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ please ਆਪਣੇ 14 days self isolation ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖੋ। Most of the new cases actually ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੰਦੇ out of country ਤੇ travel ਕਰਕੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਮੁੜੇ ਆ Canada ਨੂੰ। So ਅਸੀਂ encourage ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ out of country ਸੀ, please stay home and self isolate. It is the most important thing you can do. And I just want to encourage, not just the seniors, it really is young people that need to, I think, follow the necessary health precautions, because it may not be you, but it could be your elderly grandmother, your grandfather, someone who's immunocompromised that you could infect. And I think that's very important for everybody to know, that it isn't always just about protecting your own health. We do need to think about those that are most vulnerable in our community. So washing our hands is important. Self-isolate as best as you can. I know it can be difficult, but stay indoors. And if you do go outside, only for necessary items, and keep your distance 2 meters of distance from other people.
ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦੱਸਾਂ ਕਿ ਸੈਰਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਪਦੇ ਫਾਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ। ਸੈਰਾ, ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਦ ਬੈਸਟ ਇਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ।
ਜ਼ਰੂਰ। ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਸਮਾਲ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਓਨਰ ਹੈ, ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਡਿਫਿਕਲਟ ਟੂ ਸੀ ਜਦ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਏ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੇ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ 14 ਡੇਜ਼ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਸੋ ਹੁਣ 6ਵਾਂ ਦਿਨ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਐਨਰਜੀ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਐਕਸਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਾਂ, ਪਰ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਆ, ਟੀਵੀ ਵਾਚ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਕਮਰੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ, ਸਾਡੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਇੱਦਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਿਵਿੰਗ ਰੂਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠ ਕੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਮੂਵੀਜ਼ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ। ਇਹ ਆਈਸੋਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਆਪ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਆਪ ਸੈਪਰੇਟ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਦੂਜੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ।
ਮੈਂ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਇਹੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਡਸ ਨਾਟ ਮੈਟਰ ਹੂ ਯੂ ਆਰ, ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲੇ ਡਿਪਟੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਨੇ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਆਫੀਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਆਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਪਦੇ ਫਾਦਰ ਹੁਣੇ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਐਂਡ ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਇਨ ਸੈਲਫ ਆਈਸੋਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਇਨ ਹਿਜ਼ ਓਨ ਹਾਊਸ। ਅਤੇ ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਰੈਗੂਲਰ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲਸ ਨੇ, ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਪੀਪਲ, ਜੌਬਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ, ਵੀ ਸ਼ੁੱਡ ਬੀ ਸੈਲਫ ਆਈਸੋਲੇਟਿੰਗ ਆਰਸੈਲਵਸ।
Absolutely. This is not a disease that, picks and chooses who's going to get sick. We've seen some very high profile people test positive for COVID-19. And so again, we're just urging every member of society to please practice these recommendations. It really does not matter who you are. And again, it may not be yourself that you're, protecting, but it might be other people in the community. Our health system cannot take on more if we don't take these precautions. So I think it's very, very important to encourage anybody that's been out of the country or anyone that has any symptoms whatsoever, please isolate yourself so we could stop the spread of this disease.
Well, we're going to go on a short break. You're watching the Grewal show. ਸਾਡੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਸੈਰਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਡਿਪਟੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ। ਤੇ ਐਸੇ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ। ਕੀਪ ਔਨ ਵਾਚਿੰਗ। ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਗ੍ਰੇਵਲ ਸ਼ੋ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਸੈਰਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਡਿਪਟੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ NDP ਪਾਰਟੀ, ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ MPP ਨੇ। ਵੈਲਕਮ ਬੈਕ ਸੈਰਾ।
Thank you.
As we were discussing, Sarah, regarding COVID-19, and now the question comes back again to you for the NDP party. If NDP was the governing party and some other party was the opposition party, what would you have done differently than what Mr. Ford did?
That's a great question. Actually, our leader, Andrea Horvath, had a press conference this morning where she laid out some additional measures that we're proposing to the government. And that is regarding a basic income that would start flowing to people. We're requesting that, that be made available as soon as possible, because what the current federal provisions are really will not help most people in these situations. And so we've asked that a basic income of $2,000 be allocated to those who require it, that there is a child benefit that's provided of $250 per child to help offset, some of those costs of children being home at this point. So those are some of the ideas. We've also asked that there's a stop to evictions in the province, as some people, especially people that are living paycheck to paycheck, are not able to work, that their rent payments are halted, and that landlords work with those tenants to ensure that no one is evicted during the pandemic. So that's another measure that we've called on this government, as well as relief for small businesses. I come from a small business family. I know I just spoke with the CEO of our Brampton Board of Trade, and small businesses are really struggling right now. Many of them have been forced to close. Many employees are currently laid off. So we're proposing additional measures to ensure that there's top-ups available for those employees who qualify for EI, but also recognizing there are many employees who will not qualify for EI, and calling for measures to be implemented to protect those employees so that they aren't forced into a situation of poverty or precariousness without income.
Because small businesses, how you said, they could be in your riding or they could be in downtown Toronto. They're literally closed down because they're not able to open because there's no clients coming.
Absolutely. We've heard that a number of businesses, unfortunately, have been just to control the spread, have been asked to close down if they are
Yeah.
not providing a necessary service to the public. But again, there's an economic impact when those businesses have to close. Those business owners are facing an economic impact, but then there's thousands of employees that are employed through businesses, small businesses, that are going to be losing out on their wages. And so there needs to be a package that, one, protects those workers, but also helps those small business owners who are going to be struggling due to the loss of profits that they are incurring. We've heard of businesses that have had to permanently close their doors because, for example, they may not have the reserve fund in order to make rent on April 1st, or
That's correct.
other measures that they may need. Not to forget that businesses also have hydro insurance. There are so many other expenses that a business needs to incur. Again, this is why we're saying some of the measures are very welcomed by the government, but at the end of the day, they aren't fully protecting those that are going to be most impacted by the closures. And we're calling for the government to really ensure that those small businesses can continue to function, and that they're given. Some are able to apply, for example, a line of credit, but that's if your business is in a position where you're a bankable business, and a bank will allow you to apply for additional credit or extensions. But some businesses may not be in that position. They may not have the liquidity in order to survive over the next number of months. And so we're really encouraging the government to think of those businesses. The large corporations, we understand that they will get bailouts in order to continue, but it's the small businesses that really push this economy forward here in the province, in our country, and we're encouraging this government to make sure that those businesses can continue to operate.
ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿਰਾਏਦਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ, ਰੈਂਟਰਸ, ਕੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਕੋਈ ਲੈਜਿਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਣੂਗੀ ਓਨਟੇਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿਰਾਏਦਾਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਂਟ ਨਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਪਵੇ?
ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਪੁਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਪੈਕੇਜ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਲੈਂਡਲੋਰਡਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੈਂਡਲੋਰਡਸ ਆ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਡਿਫਰਲਸ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਰੈਂਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਅੱਜ ਤੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ concrete protections ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖੇ। ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੰਸਰਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿਰਾਏ ਤੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ April 1st ਤੇ ਰੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੋਗਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੱਢੂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਵੀਕ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਾਇੋਰਟੀ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਬਣਾਈ ਵੀ ਆ। ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਹਾਊਸਿੰਗ ਕ੍ਰਿਟਿਕ, ਮੈਂ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੀਕ ਸਕੈਜੂਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਾਲ ਕਰਨੇ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਇਨਸ਼ੋਰ ਕਰੂੰਗੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੈਂਟਰਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਕਟ ਹੋਣਗੇ, ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੋਮ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਐਂਡ ਜੇ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ eviction notice ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਸਕਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ।
When we are talking about this legislation, is Queen's Park back to normal this week?
No, so we're not back to normal. This week was actually our budget week, so we would have been the government would have released its budget on March 25th, and so they'll be releasing an economic statement instead. So it is not business as usual. We are hoping that this economic package will include relief for Ontarians. However, we're not sure what the details of that plan will look like until we are able to get back into the legislature on Wednesday. So there will be another emergency session that will be called, perhaps a select group of MPPs, similar to what we did the previous week to pass the legislation, to review what the government is tabling. And again, as opposition members, we will continue to push this government and work with them to ensure that Ontarians are protected. So if something is not clearly articulated in that economic statement or any legislation that is tabled this week, we will continue to make sure that we address those issues with the government. Ultimately, it is their responsibility, and they ultimately have a majority government with the power to enact any types of measures that we need to protect people in this province, and we're encouraging them to exercise that power to ensure that everyone is protected to the best of our ability.
So is there any new timeline for the budget to come in Ontario?
Again, we're waiting for more direction from the government. It is their budget, and so they do set the timelines. Again, just given that everything is changing so rapidly, it's hard to say what those new timelines may be at this point. I'm sure we'll learn more this week as the economic statement is released on Wednesday. But up until then, at this point, we're not sure how the government is going to proceed. But we do understand, and we are working with them, just given that it's very unprecedented situations that we're in. We're not trying to be overly oppositional. We are really trying to work with this government again to pass what's needed to pass, and ensure that the protections are put in place to keep Ontario moving as best as we can.
Now, as we all know, it's been almost over a week since the emergency was called in Ontario. ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ basic step ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਸੀਗਾ ਵੀ no more than 50 people at any given place. Are you aware of any charges being laid for those?
At this point, I'm not. I think it's an important measure. I think, we've seen that some people are not following those rules. Just this past weekend, we saw massive lineups to purchase a video game. It's unfortunate that some people are not following the rules, and it is unfortunate that the government may need to take, more measures to ensure that people are practicing social distancing or not engaging in large gatherings. So at this point, I'm not aware of any changes or charges, sorry, that have been laid as a result of this. But again, we're just encouraging everybody to follow common sense. I don't think, officers want to be using their resources to go out and, police people to get off the streets because they're crowding. I think those resources could be better used responding to emergencies and addressing frontline concerns. But again, this is where we just call on everybody in the community to use common sense, to practice the social distancing, to adhere to the measures that are being called for by the government, both provincial, federal, all public health officials are calling for these measures. And we just really want to encourage the public to please just adhere to it. I know it's difficult, but it's for the safety of us all.
Now, at the end, there has been a lot of funding which has been given to the healthcare system in Ontario by the provincial government and the federal government. You think is that funding enough?
So it's a challenging question because I think, we always welcome any investments to healthcare, but at the end of the day, when you have healthcare systems that have been so neglected for so many decades, the surge of funding right now is just going to help us keep afloat. We really need to have these investments be long term and sustained because, these types of pandemics can happen at any point in time, and resourcing the system now is kind of just putting a band-aid on a very large wound. So it's welcomed, but at the end of the day, we need to see sustained investments to ensure that the equipment's going to be there, that those beds are going to be there, that ICU rooms are going to be there, that our healthcare professionals will have personal protection equipment, their masks, their gloves. All of these things are what these healthcare dollars should be going towards. Respirators. Right now, we're hearing that there may be a potential shortage of respirators. These are all things that if we plan and we invest over the long term into our healthcare system, when something like this happens, a crisis like this happens, we are better prepared. So I hope that these recent events are a good opportunity for us to learn about why it's so important to properly invest in our healthcare system, not just when a crisis happens, but on an ongoing basis.
Well, as you're aware, our show is being watched not just in Ontario, it's been watched all over the world. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ viewers ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਵੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਨੇ at the end what would your message be for COVID-19?
So my message is ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਕਿ please ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ world ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਵੀ health precautions ਤੁਹਾਡੇ government ਨੇ recommend ਕੀਤੇ ਹਨ, please follow ਕਰੋ. Together ਅਸੀਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਇਸ disease ਨੂੰ stop ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, the spread stop ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. So just encouraging everybody to follow those safety precautions and be kind to one another. I've seen some very positive stories also during this very scary time for us all. people, some very positive stories about community coming together. So I just want to encourage everybody, one, follow those health precautions, but two, if you see somebody in need, if you can reach out to a neighbor to help them with some groceries or essential supplies, please, this is where hopefully we can see the best of humanity, and we can thrive through this, pandemic, rather than sort of, fall down. I think this is really an opportunity for us to lift each other up and show what the strength of our communities can be around the world.
Well, thank you for taking our request, Sara Singh, to join us so our viewers can hear your views on COVID-19. And we will be in touch with you again to do a special show. Hopefully COVID-19's gone. Maybe next time we'll talk on the budget in Ontario.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Grewal, for having me on, and to all your viewers for listening today. Please be safe out there, be kind, and keep well, everyone.
Well, thank you for watching the Grewal
Asti
Show.
Gaji Sare.
Today our guest was Sara Singh, Deputy Leader, Ontario NDP Party. Next show, another guest, some other thoughts, any questions, concerns you have, let us know. We'll be glad to answer them. Sarenu, Sat Sri Akal.